In Ushuaia, at the bottom of the world, cars aren't just parked, they're anchored. Chains connect bumpers to concrete blocks buried in the ground. Roofs tilt at 45 degrees, steep enough to make you dizzy looking up. Stone walls are built 3 times thicker than they need to be for weight alone. This isn't paranoia, it's architecture, because here, wind doesn't gust occasionally, it schedules. 100 kilometers per hour isn't a storm warning, it's Tuesday. And somehow, in this place where nature seems to have the final word on everything, 250,000 people have built not just shelters, but lives. Businesses, families, futures. So here's the question worth asking. How do you create civilization where the environment rewrites the rules every single day? To understand the answer, you need to understand the scale of what we're talking about. Patagonia stretches across more than 400,000 square miles at the southern tip of South America. It spans 2 countries, Chile and Argentina, and holds a population density of 0.6 people per square mile. For context, that's emptier than Mongolia. But the emptiness isn't what makes it extreme. It's the wind. The westerlies, powerful air currents that circle the southern hemisphere, get funneled through the Andes Mountains like water through a fire hose. They hit Patagonia with relentless force, 365 days a year. There's no wind season here. There's just wind, and occasionally less wind. Most people hear about Patagonia and picture glaciers, mountains, penguins, landscape magazine covers. But those landscapes are home to 250,000 people who've figured out something the rest of us haven't. They've learned to build where nature refuses to compromise. I spent 3 months here talking to people who don't just survive extreme conditions. They've designed entire lives around them. 3 people, 3 generations, 3 completely different approaches to the same impossible question. Pablo is 38, a 3rd-generation constructor in Ushuaia. He builds houses that look like they're bowing to the wind. He told me, "I don't fight wind. I invite it to the planning meeting." Marta is 58, born and raised in El Calafate, where the Perito Moreno glacier dominates everything. Her grandfather watched ice advance to the shore. She watches it retreat. "My daughter will watch something we can't predict yet," she said. Mateo is 27. 2 years ago, he left a 6-figure software job in Santiago to make furniture in Puerto Natales. Population 20,000. "Santiago gave me success," he explained. "Patagonia gave me something to succeed at." 3 people who've each answered the same question differently. Why would anyone choose this over comfort? Pablo grew up watching his grandfather argue with wind. Literally argue with it, cursing in Spanish as another roof panel tore loose. His father tried different approaches, importing Scandinavian construction techniques designed for cold. Those failed too. The cold wasn't the problem. the wind was. By the time Pablo started his own construction company, he'd seen enough failure to know what didn't work. Everything designed somewhere else and dropped into Ushuaia basically fell apart within 5 years. The question wasn't just how to build stronger, it was how to build different. In Ushuaia, wind speed averages between 80 and 100 kilometers per hour. That's not the peak. That's the baseline. On bad days, it tops 140. At those speeds, wind doesn't push against buildings, it tries to peel them apart from the top down. Standard architecture treats wind as a temporary force to resist. Here, wind is a permanent presence to accommodate. Pablo showed me the difference in his own neighborhood. Houses built by local constructors have roofs pitched at 45 degrees, sometimes steeper. Not for snow. Ushuaia doesn't get that much. For wind, the steep angle forces air to flow over the structure instead of slamming into it. It's the same principle that keeps airplane wings attached at 500 miles per hour. The walls are different too. Stone, not wood, and not because stone is stronger. Because it's heavier. Wind creates lift, especially on corners and edges. A wooden house that weighs 20 tons can actually start to shift on its foundation during the worst storms. A stone house weighing 60 tons stays put. The thickness isn't about insulation. It's about mass. Even the streets matter. Ushuaia's oldest neighborhoods are laid out to channel wind, not block it. Dead-end streets create pressure zones where wind swirls and amplifies. Through streets, let it pass. You can walk 2 blocks in this city and experience completely different wind conditions because someone 100 years ago understood fluid dynamics without naming it. Window placement follows annual wind maps. Most houses have small windows facing west where the westerlies hit and larger windows facing north where the Beagle Channel provides some shelter. Every detail is a negotiation between human need and environmental force. Then there's the story Pablo tells about the 2019 tourist lodge. A development company from Buenos Aires wanted to build a luxury eco-lodge on the hills above town. They hired a prestigious architectural firm that had done projects in Norway and Iceland. The design was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, cantilevered decks, a green roof with native grasses. Pablo's company bid on the project. They lost to a cheaper contractor who promised to build exactly what the architects drew. Pablo built his own house 400 meters away and watched. The lodge opened in March. It collapsed in July. Not catastrophically, no one died, but the green roof peeled off in sections. The western windows shattered. The cantilevered deck snapped at its bolts. Within 1 winter, the structure was uninhabitable. The insurance investigation cited unprecedented wind events, which made Pablo laugh. There's nothing unprecedented about July wind in Ushuaia. His house, 400 meters away, didn't lose a single shingle. The difference wasn't budget or materials. It was philosophy. The lodge was designed to resist wind. Pablo's house was designed to accommodate it. You don't conquer a force that never stops. You choreograph with it. But wind shapes more than just buildings. It shapes how you think about time itself. Because when nature operates on its own schedule, human urgency starts to look different. Marta doesn't remember a time when the glacier wasn't the center of everything. Born in El Calafate in 1966, she grew up with the sound of ice carving into Lago Argentino as her town's constant background noise. That sound, the thunderous crack and splash, is what brings tourists, and tourists are what keep El Calafate alive. 90% of the town's economy runs on Perito Moreno. Hotels, restaurants, guide services, boat tours, even the gas stations exist primarily because people want to watch ice fall into water. It's spectacular. A wall of blue ice, 200 feet tall and 3 miles wide, constantly moving, constantly breaking, constantly renewing itself. Except now, not constantly. Marta's grandfather, who moved to El Calafate in the 1952 to work on the newly built road, told stories about walking right up to the glacier front. The ice literally touched the shore. You could stand at the edge and reach out to touch walls of blue ice with your bare hand. Tourists back then came with ice axes to chip off souvenirs. The glacier was something you could physically interact with, not just photograph from a distance. By the time Marta was a teenager in the 1980 seconds, there was already a gap, maybe 50 meters of water between the shore and the ice front. Her summer job was rowing tourists closer in small boats. She remembers the glacier carving almost constantly back then. You'd hear crashes every few minutes, sometimes big chunks, sometimes small, but always something falling. The movement was relentless. Her daughter Elena, who's 24 now, grew up with a 200-meter gap. The boat tours got bigger to cover the distance. The carving events got less frequent, more dramatic when they happened, but definitely less constant. What was background noise in Marta's childhood is now an event worth waiting for. Marta keeps a photo her grandfather took in 1962. It's black and white, slightly faded, but the perspective is clear. He's standing on the shore with the glacier looming behind him, close enough to block out half the sky. She took Elena to the exact same spot 3 years ago and recreated the photo. Same angle, same composition. The glacier in the background is a thin white line on the horizon. What happens when the thing your entire economy depends on is visibly disappearing? Most people would say you're watching a slow-motion disaster. Marta describes it differently. My grandfather adapted to ice advancing, she explained. In the 50 seconds and 60 seconds, the glacier was growing. It would block parts of the lake, cause flooding, change boat routes every season. He adapted to too much ice. I'm adapting to less ice. Elena will adapt to something we can't predict yet. That's not disaster. That's just time. The community has made practical changes. 10 years ago, almost every tour in El Calafate was glacier-focused. Now, the offerings are more diverse. Ice hiking, yes, but also horseback riding in the surrounding hills. kayaking in the smaller lakes, multi-day trekking in the backcountry. The glacier is still the main draw, but it's not the only draw. They're also training the next generation differently. The high school in El Calafate now has a mandatory course on sustainable tourism and environmental adaptation. Kids learn to guide multi-activity tours, not just glacier tours. They learn basic ecology and climate science so they can explain what's happening without pretending it isn't. The economic strategy is long-term. Elena is studying hospitality management, but her focus is adventure tourism, not sightseeing. She's preparing for a version of El Calafate, where the glacier might be smaller, or farther, or seasonally accessible instead of year-round. She's not denying the change. She's preparing for it. Marta pulled out that photo comparison one more time before I left. Her grandfather's version and Elena's version side by side. The difference is stark. Undeniable. People ask me if I'm sad, Marta said. I tell them, sadness is for things that shouldn't change. Glaciers are supposed to change. They've been advancing and retreating for millions of years. My lifetime is a blink. My sadness doesn't matter to ice. But my adaptation does matter to my daughter. Living with geological time, when you only have a human lifetime, isn't resignation. It's sophistication. Pablo inherited wind, Marta inherited glaciers. Both learned to adapt to conditions they were born into. But some people don't inherit extremity at all. They choose it, and that choice reveals something different about what humans are capable of. Mateo didn't come to Patagonia because he failed in Santiago. He came because he was succeeding and it was killing him. At 25, he had everything that's supposed to matter. Software engineer at a fintech startup, salary in the six figures when converted to dollars, apartment in Providencia, Santiago's nicest neighborhood. He worked 14-hour days. Sometimes 16. The work was interesting. The money was good. His parents were proud. By every metric his generation was taught to value, Mateo had won. But his resting heart rate was 95 beats per minute. He wasn't sleeping more than 4 hours consecutively. His therapist, which everyone in his office had because therapy was part of the benefits package, suggested medication for anxiety. He was 25 years old and being medicated to tolerate success. The breaking point came during a vacation. His company offered unlimited PTO, which meant no one took it because taking vacations signaled you weren't committed. But after 18 months without a break, his manager insisted. Mateo booked a week hiking in Torres del Paine National Park, mostly because it was far enough from Santiago that he'd have an excuse for slow email responses. He spent 7 days hiking alone. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, no Slack notifications. Just wind, mountains, and the sound of his own breathing getting steadier. By day 3, his resting heart rate had dropped to 70. By day 5, he slept 8 hours straight for the first time in 2 years. On the last day, sitting by Lago Pejo, watching clouds move over the Cuernos peaks, He did the math. His life expectancy in Santiago, given his current health trajectory, was maybe 30 more years. Probably less. He could keep succeeding himself to death, or he could choose something different. 4 months later, he moved to Puerto Natales permanently. The practical reality was harsh. His salary went from 6 figures to about $20,000 a year working as a furniture maker's apprentice. Puerto Natales has 20,000 people, 1 movie theater, no delivery services, and a grocery store that closes at 7 p.m. The internet is functional, but slow. There's no co-working space, no startup scene, no craft cocktail bars. In winter, the sun rises at 9 a.m. and sets at 4 p.m. 6 hours of daylight. The other 18 hours are dark. The wind howls constantly. The social circle is limited. Everyone knows everyone, which means you can't escape your reputation or your mistakes. There's no anonymity. Mateo acknowledges all of this. He's not pretending Puerto Natales is paradise. It's just different problems. But here's what changed. His resting heart rate is now 62. He sleeps 8 hours most nights. He stopped needing therapy. Not because his problems disappeared, but because the problems became manageable. His relationships went from transactional to actual. He knows his neighbors' names. He helps them move furniture. They bring him firewood. It's not networking, it's community. The metrics are interesting. Before Mateo left Santiago, he participated in a study tracking stress biomarkers in tech workers. Cortisol levels, sleep quality, heart rate variability. His numbers were bad enough that researchers flagged him for follow-up. He got tested again after a year in Puerto Natales. His cortisol dropped 40%. Sleep quality improved from 35% efficiency to 78%. Heart rate variability, which indicates nervous system health, doubled. By every physiological measure, he's healthier despite earning a fraction of his previous salary and living in objectively harsher conditions. I'm poorer and I'm better, Mateo explained. In Santiago, I could afford anything, but I had time for nothing. Here, I can afford very little, but I have time for things that actually matter. It sounds like a cliche, but the data backs it up. My body knows the difference. The psychological shift runs deeper than stress reduction. In Santiago, Mateo had infinite options. Any restaurant, any entertainment, any career pivot, any relationship, the abundance was paralyzing. Every choice meant rejecting 1,000 alternatives. He spent more energy deciding what to do than actually doing anything. Puerto Natales has 1 good restaurant, 2 bars, a handful of available jobs, a dating pool you can count on your hands. The constraint isn't limiting, it's clarifying. Every choice matters more because there are fewer to make. In Santiago, I could be anyone, Mateo said, which meant I was never really anyone, just a collection of options I hadn't chosen yet. Here, I have to be someone specific. The guy who makes furniture, who helps neighbors, who shows up. There's no hiding in potential. This is the thing about voluntary extremity that most people miss. Mateo didn't move to Patagonia to escape. He moved to focus. Modern success, at least the version sold to his generation, is about keeping maximum optionality open. Never commit fully to anything because a better option might appear. Stay liquid, stay flexible, stay available. Patagonian success is the opposite. It's about deep capability in narrow domains. Mateo is becoming an exceptional furniture maker, not a mediocre generalist. He knows 4 things very well instead of 40 things poorly. His social circle is small, but the relationships are real. He's not optimizing for breadth anymore. He's optimizing for depth. People ask if I miss Santiago, Mateo said. I miss good sushi. I miss concerts. I miss variety. But I don't miss the person I was becoming there. That guy was successful and dying. I'm struggling here, and I'm alive. That's not romantic. It's just math. Modern success promises infinite optionality. Patagonian success delivers deep capability. Those are different goals requiring different places. If Patagonia is calling you, here's what actually matters. First, the survival principles. Layers beat insulation every time. Patagonia doesn't have seasons in the normal sense. It has weather that cycles through all 4 seasons in a single day. You'll start a morning hike in sunshine, hit snow by noon, and finish in wind and rain. The only way to handle that is layers you can add and remove constantly. 3 medium layers work better than 1 thick layer. Schedule flexibility isn't optional, it's mandatory. Weather dictates everything here. Flights get cancelled, ferries don't run, tours get postponed. If you build a rigid itinerary, Patagonia will destroy it. Build in buffer days. Assume half your plans will change. The travelers who enjoy this place most are the ones who surrender control. Cash reserves matter more than you'd think. Supply chains are fragile. A storm can shut down roads for a week. Grocery stores run out of fresh produce. ATMs empty and take days to refill. Keep enough cash to survive 2 weeks without resupply. It's not paranoia when it happens regularly. Learn basic Spanish and a few Mapudungun phrases. English works in major tourist centers, but Patagonia is bigger than the tourist centers. More importantly, making an effort with language signals respect. The difference in how locals treat you when you try versus when you expect English is enormous. Embrace slow. Patagonian time is not tourist time. Things happen when they happen. Buses leave late. Restaurants serve food when it's ready, not when you order it. Fighting this will make you miserable. Accepting it will change your nervous system. Now, gear truth. Forget everything Instagram told you about expensive down jackets and color-coordinated hiking outfits. What actually matters in Patagonia is wind resistance, not warmth. The wind cuts through everything. You need a quality wind shell as your outer layer. That's the single most important piece of gear. A $100 wind shell will serve you better than a $500 down jacket. Base layers should be merino wool, not cotton. When cotton gets wet, it stays wet and makes you cold. Merino regulates temperature and stays warm when damp. 2 merino base layers cost about $80 and matter more than any other clothing investment. Skip the expensive waterproof hiking boots. They're heavy and take forever to dry. Trail runners with good ankle support and wool socks work better. Your feet will get wet regardless. Better to have shoes that dry overnight than boots that stay soggy for days. Budget breakdown is $300 functional versus $2,000 Instagram aesthetic. Spend money on the wind shell, base layers, and a good sleeping bag if you're camping. Everything else is optional. Cultural etiquette. When engaging with gaucho culture or indigenous communities, ask permission before taking photos. Offer to share mate if you're invited into someone's space. Leave no trace isn't a suggestion, it's law. Patagonia's ecosystem is fragile and recovery is slow. Pack out everything you pack in. Photography ethics matter here more than most places. The landscapes are stunning, but people live in them. Don't treat locals as props for your travel photos. If you want to photograph someone, ask first. Offer to send them the photo. Basic respect goes a long way. Budget options exist if you know where to look. The tourist path costs $200 to $300 per day. Hotels, guided tours, restaurant meals. The local path costs $50 to $80 per day. Hospedages instead of hotels, grocery stores instead of restaurants, public buses instead of tour vans. The sweet spot is around $100 to $120 per day, mixing both approaches. Timing matters enormously. November through March is summer. 18 hours of daylight, warmest temperatures, but also peak crowds and peak prices. April and May are autumn. Cheaper, fewer people, still decent weather. June through August is winter. 6 hours of daylight, genuine extreme conditions, but this is real Patagonia. Most services close. It's harsh and it's honest. September is shoulder season. Avoid it. Services are transitioning, weather is unpredictable, and you get the worst of both worlds. Best month overall is probably January if you want comfort, June if you want authenticity. So how do 250,000 people build civilization where nature makes the rules? They don't fight. They don't conquer. They don't pretend the environment will bend to human will. Pablo designs with wind instead of against it. Marta adapts to geological time instead of denying it. Mateo chooses constraint instead of fleeing it. 3 different approaches to the same fundamental truth. Architecture isn't about buildings. It's about philosophy. It's about understanding what you can control and what you have to accommodate. Patagonia doesn't test you. It reveals what you already are. If you need to dominate your environment to feel successful, you'll be miserable here. If you can negotiate with forces larger than yourself, you'll find something most people spend their lives searching for. Clarity. The wind-bent trees here don't grow straight, but they grow strong. Their roots go deeper because they have to. Their trunks are thick because constant stress builds resilience. They're shaped by their environment, and that shape is what keeps them alive. You don't need to move to Patagonia to learn what Pablo and Marta and Mateo know. You just need to find your own edge of the map. The place where your environment stops accommodating you and starts demanding you accommodate it. Where's your wind? What are you trying to control that might teach you more if you learn to dance with it instead? Which of these three approaches resonates with you? The technical adapter, the temporal adapter, or the psychological adapter? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories about people thriving where impossible is normal, subscribe. There's a whole world of edges worth exploring.